That's right. And unfortunately, I have to criticize the president and say that he's not standing up to them the way he should be. He should be resisting. As a friend of mine, George O'Neill, said in a recent article in American Conservative, Trump needs to tell Congress, we're getting out of Afghanistan. If you want us to stay in Afghanistan, you need to take an affirmative action and declare war. He knows that we're not going to do that. We know that they're not going to do that. And he needs to call their bluff.
Right. Yeah. Why do you think, how is it that so much of the, let's say, younger generation can be so sold on the idea that the Obama, Bush, Clinton power matrix is the youth answer when they are so lockstep for war? I mean, to me, if you are a person, let's say under 50, I don't know hardly anyone, who is favorable for continual intervention abroad. And yet it seems like because of their hatred of Trump, they cannot possibly even see that cognitive dissonance.
It really is amazing. When I grew up, it was the young people who were pushing for peace. During the Vietnam War, it was mostly young people who were out there marching against war. And today, you have so many of the young people have bought into the idea that we need to rule the world, and they're backing the idea of the United States being exceptional and being the world policeman, that we don't have to live by the same rules as everybody else.
Mm-hmm. So what got you into starting antiwar.com? I want to get into a little bit of the background behind this, because this is a site that doesn't pull any punches when it comes to intervention abroad and imperial foreign policy, no matter who's doing it. So what was the journey that led you to create this project?
Well, I've been anti-war since for most of my life. I was eligible for the draft when I turned 18, and I decided to resist going to Vietnam. I did not want to go and fight an illegal and immoral war, and so I said, no, I'm not going to go. And that led me to become an anti-war activist, and at the time, I considered myself to be on the left. But as I got more involved, I realized that it was the big government and the war machine were tied so closely together. And that's what led me to reject the idea of socialism and of government power, and to embrace the idea that the individual was prime, and that we needed to reduce the size of government, reduce the taxation power of government, and reduce the things that allow people who get in power to conduct these kinds of wars. Mm-hmm. And so seeing that was had such a tight hold on what was considered to be the anti-war movement, I wanted to create an anti-war vehicle that was more broad-based, that appealed to Americans from all walks of life, from all political points of view, to show them that we needed to try to live in peace with the rest of the world. And in 1995, I went ahead and started antiwar.com. One of the first columnists that we brought on board was Pat Buchanan, who was obviously not on the left. And we created a coalition of people across the political spectrum who were opposed to war and the big government that enables war.
Right. To me, it's common sense that if you want to have less carnage overseas on behalf of your tax dollars and so forth, that it starts with paring down that government and keeping it from being a centralized command control system at home. And yet again, we can't seem to get any traction for much of the mainstream left. Now, there are, of course, great, holdouts to the true spirit of the left, which is critical of, empire. And those folks should be celebrated. But by and large, what you see on places like Twitter, whenever Trump tries to talk to the Taliban, they come out and say, look, he's talking to the Taliban. He's a traitor. He's a traitor. He's a traitor. And they sound like Dick Cheney. And yet the left just a few years ago made Dick Cheney look like Darth Vader with 10% approval rating or whatever. So it's like it doesn't seem to have any basis in sanity, their position on war.
Well, it's very unfortunate, and it's so unfortunate to see so many people taking the position that the ends justify the means. Right. Because there's a lot of people who used to be anti-war. You look at somebody like Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, and she used to be one of the leading proponents of opposition to war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan. But since the politics have changed, we see that she is more interested in political power than in actual principles. And that's unfortunately the case with so many people in politics. And it doesn't matter whether they're on the left or on the right. The most important thing to them is to win at all costs.
Yeah, that's a nihilistic position. It's not rooted in anything that is truly progressive, nor is it rooted in anything conservative for that matter. When we continue live with Eric Garris of antiwar.com, we'll continue to look at some of the news and foreign policy, analyzing what's going on overseas, because nobody else covers this stuff right now. You get so much fixation on using the pandemic as a political pawn, using the politics of that as a bludgeon against different political figures. And that's a distraction from what continues to happen on our behalf by an out-of-control swamp of foreign policy. Back in just a moment, live.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
How would you like to be a part of the Guinness Book of World Records? Here's a unique opportunity for you if you own a boat. Conservative Grounds Coffee Shop in Largo will be hosting the world record for the largest boat parade on August 15th. This record-breaking event will be coming to the Pinellas Intercoastal Waterways in beautiful Clearwater. This parade will be held in honor of the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and all the accomplishments from his administration. More than 1,200 supporters are expected, and that's a number to exceed the current Guinness World Record. If you support the Trump administration, bring your vessel and come out and join in for this once-in-a-lifetime event and be a part of a world record. All profits go to charity or conservative political campaigns in the area.
To register for this once-in-a-lifetime event and be a part of the Guinness Book of World Records, visit HugeBoatParade.com. That's HugeBoatParade.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Lang, board-certified optometric physician and certified nutritional specialist, host of popular talk show Ask the Doctor. I've researched and developed an amazing new omega-3 product that you'll see incredible results with. It's called Fortify Super Omega-3 Max. I had one of the top Norwegian omega-3 research teams in conjunction with myself and Fortify Vitamins aid in the development of this advanced omega-3. This product is the most potent and purest triglyceride form omega-3 in the United States today. Omega-3 is great for all aspects of your health and well-being, especially in this unprecedented, challenging time. I am giving a 25% discount with promo code RADIO during this viral pandemic. Go to my website, fortify.com. That's FORTIFEYE. Remember the EYE in Fortify. That's fortify.com. Enter the promo code RADIO to receive the 25% discount.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. We're talking about the news related to foreign policy with Eric Garris, the founder of antiwar.com. And it's an interesting time because usually foreign policy has played a big outsized role, well, not outsized, but a major part of election season debates, but you don't hear about it much. And I think it's because the media, playing the PR firm for the Democratic, Republican establishment point of view, they know they're on the losing side on that issue. They know that, Biden's record of intervention is so disgusting to the broad, vast majority of Americans that they don't want to talk about foreign policy. They don't feel like that's on the script. And so because they're cheap microwave Pravda, they don't talk about it because they know that the young voters that they want to turn out in record numbers to vote for Biden would not want to hear about the foreign policy of sanctions and intervention. So they just want to make it go away as fast as they can. So I want to ask Eric Garris here. There's a column in the New York Times that was published yesterday by Ben Smith, and it was talking about war games, that how the Democratic Party was wargaming out scenarios for what would happen on Election Day. So at the end of the Ben Smith column, it says, but conveniently, a group of former top government officials called the Transitional Integrity Project actually gamed 4 possible scenarios, including one that doesn't look that different from 2016, a big popular win for Mr. Biden and a narrow electoral defeat, presumably reached after weeks of counting the votes in Pennsylvania. For their war game, they cast John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's chairman, in the role of Mr. Biden. But Mr. Podesta, playing Mr. Biden, shocked the organizers by saying he felt his party wouldn't let him concede. Alleging voter suppression, he persuaded the governors of Wisconsin and Michigan to send pro-Biden electors to the Electoral College. In that scenario, California, Oregon, and Washington then threatened to secede from the United States if Mr. Trump took office as planned. The House named Mr. Biden president. The Senate and White House stuck with Mr. Trump. At that point in the scenario, the nation stopped looking to the media for cues and waited to see what the military would do. That's a very strange column in the New York Times, Eric. What do you think of that?
Well, I had not read the column, but I'm not really surprised. The Democrats at this point are willing to do anything to win, and that includes cheating, and that includes violating the law, that includes seizing power with the military or anyone else that they can get on board. And it's really disheartening to see that so many political leaders in this country are willing to suspend the Constitution, to suspend the will of the people, to do anything, to start a war with another country, to do whatever it takes to win power. That is the only thing that they care about.
Right. And that's what.
And you can see it if you turn on CNN any night.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it. That's all they talk about is that the defeat of Trump and the ascension of Joe Biden is the most important thing, and everything else be damned.
And they're hallucinating now openly in their state media organs, like the New York Times, when they're saying, they're imagining publicly, well, what will happen if Biden, wants to contest the integrity of the election like our last candidate? They are very ruthless. They want full totalitarian control, it seems. It's very disturbing to me. They want to stack the Supreme Court. They want a popular election. What they want is empire, don't they?
That's right. And if they win, I think they're going to try and do everything they can to ensure that they never lose that power again. You're going to see 2 new Democratic Party states enter the union very quickly after, if this happens. You're going to see a lot of changes that are going to result in a permanent Democratic Party majority. And at that point, they don't have to implement any policies that the people want. All they have to do is manipulate the situation to give themselves more and more power so that it can never be taken away from them. And I think they're overconfident. I don't think the American people would stand for that. But they do. They are drunk with power even before they get it.
But they also have their loyal allies in the Republican establishment, represented by Bush and Romney and the McCain type philosophies. And that's what I feel like the Republican Party, as represented by those folks, are kind of like they're supposed to be the team that the Harlem Globetrotters play,
Yes, exactly. That's a very good analogy.
And so it's kind of like that loyal opposition that's supposed to be there. And Trump kind of threw that into a scramble. Now, he's largely been continuing the establishment, but it shows you, Eric, how fragile and how insecure they are. That someone who basically keeps the status quo of much of everything they need for their special interest to be happy is still too much of a threat for them to just allow it to be done in a fair game. They've got to turn nearly 100% of the media against this guy. They've got to, create investigation after investigation. And then they've got to use their media organs to start priming the idea that, one, we shouldn't have presidential debates, and if Trump wins, we should contest it to the point of potential civil war. Absolutely bonkers,
It is very, very scary. And I would have said 6 months ago, if I was to predict what's happened in the last 6 months, people would think that I would have been crazy. So I'm not going to say what's going to happen because it's really unpredictable. But we Americans need to be prepared for what is essentially a potential coup on the part of the quote liberal. I hate to use the word because I used to like the word liberal, but the liberal establishment.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing liberal about what we're seeing from the media today as they try to openly fantasize about civil war, openly fantasize about mail-in ballots, 100% mail-in elections, total scam, crooked, imperial type appetite that they're showing, and they're not hiding it anymore. And all this comes from, I believe, allowing generations and generations of our children to be educated by government schools, which have dumbed down so much of the critical thinking required to resist the false song of despots and tyrants and those who would use sophistry to tickle ears. But we'll continue with Eric Garris of antiwar.com about foreign policy, about how it affects here at home the election, and how we can sort through the noise and confusion in this time of universal deceit. So much is at stake right now in our country, and we have to get things right. It's not going to be decided by elections, but it will be decided by a public who gets completely fed up with having a media and a government lockstep in hand to centralize out-of-control empire. Unacceptable. And the way we fight back is by always protecting the individual, no matter who they are.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040 WHP.
There's still no deal on Capitol Hill after more meetings between Republicans and Democrats like House Speaker Nancy Pelosi over the next economic stimulus package.
It was productive. We're moving down the track. We still have our differences. We are trying to have a clear understanding of what the needs are.
Democrats say the needs are for a long-term package that includes funding for cities and states. Republicans disagree. President Trump at the White House threatened to get involved, citing his executive authority if the sides do not agree to a new deal. Days after he said TikTok will be banned in the United States, he said the Chinese-owned app can continue operating in the U.S. if it sells itself to a company like Microsoft, and he said the U.S. government should get part of the sale. SIE is expected to make landfall tonight as a hurricane. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper says storm surge is the biggest threat along the coast. Severe flooding is feared inland. Brian Clark, ABC News.
Our Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gronowski, your host. So glad to be with everyone. Welcome. A shout out from the Peaceful Way, saying, what's up? How's it going, guys, over at the Peaceful Way? I'm here with Eric Garris of antiwar.com. We're talking about foreign policy news and a little bit of a change-up. We do this sometimes because not enough folks are analyzing foreign policy with a sober, independent perspective. I wanted to go to a story that antiwar.com linked to on The Guardian called Gaddafi's Prophecy Comes True as Foreign Powers Battle for Libya's Oil. And basically, it's a showdown looms, the article says, in the fight for control of the country, with Africa's largest oil fields as the prize. The article says there is a conspiracy to control Libyan oil and to control Libyan land, to colonize Libya once again. This is impossible. We will fight until the last man and last woman to defend Libya from east to west, north to south. That's a quote from Colonel Muammar Gaddafi before he was killed. Eric, what do you think of that? I mean, he was demonized. Hillary Clinton, who was supposed to be a defender of the poor and the defender of peace, was gleefully, ecstatic at the sound of his announcement of his death. What do you make of where we stand now in Libya?
Well, actually, Libya is an excellent example of the duplicitousness of U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. threatened Gaddafi. He had an early nuclear program. He had some chemical weapons programs, and he agreed to give up all of those programs and undergo inspection if they just would lift sanctions against Libya. And Gaddafi was not a nice guy. He was a ruthless dictator, but the country was not fractionalized the way that it is now. And what happened was, after he did exactly what the U.S. demanded, Hillary Clinton went in and invaded the country, bombed the country, turned the country into a totally split up, not nation, just a bunch of warring factions. Mm-hmm. We have switched sides so many times in Libya, and we've used Libya as a gun running right? That's what Benghazi was all about. Benghazi was a situation where Hillary Clinton was running a gun-running operation to fund the pro-U.S. rebels in Syria and Iraq. And it got out of hand, and it turned into a disaster. And it was the beginning of what led to Libya becoming a permanent warfare state. And it's now you just have all these countries fighting for control of their oil. And that is really what they were after. They were after a situation where they did not have to negotiate with any government. They just go in and take what they want. It's like the old-fashioned mercantilist wars of the 19th century.
Right. And so what I want to know is, why is it that so many folks who are concerned with things like the Black Lives Matter slogan and things like that, how come they're not talking about the slave market that has unleashed in the chaos that we created deliberately in Libya? And why haven't they talked about the utter carnage that people of color have experienced because of the actions of Clinton, Biden, and Obama? Not a word, you know. And if you ask people, it's like it never even happened.
Well, they don't. Many of them don't know about it. A lot of it is ignorance, but a lot of it is that they don't really hold those principles. The Black Lives Matter is just a slogan for them to promote them to power, and that they are not really concerned with the lives of individuals. They are concerned with power, and they are willing to use slogans to their opposite.
Right.
I mean, we've seen that happen in the cities in the United States, and we see it happen in U.S. foreign policy around the world. If the people who are running the wars on the part of the United States really cared about those kinds of things, they wouldn't be going around and killing lots and lots of black people around the world. We just killed a bunch of children in Somalia last week with an airstrike.
What was the reason?
There was no reason. We are trying to decimate the countries that we want to control. And it doesn't matter whether we kill children or women or innocent people. That is actually more effective for us. When we go in and we terrorize the population, that is a more effective way to conduct warfare, to completely destroy a country, rather than going after specific militants.
Right.
The militants fight back. The innocent civilians don't. And we can accomplish a lot more through terrorism than we can through actual operations.
Yeah, it seems like that's what we did in Syria too. We just made a mess of it rather than do a complete regime change, right? That's our new strategy now, is to just scramble up the order of a country. We used to try to do the full package, like with Iraq and so forth, but we realized that wasn't working. So now our policy is to just scramble it all up and just leave it as a mess, right?
It doesn't work. Nation building, we've never been able to accomplish nation building, or at least rarely. Mm-hmm. And usually what our real goal is regime destruction, not regime change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone online asked, what does Eric make of the ICC accusations against Gaddafi of, quote, weaponizing rape and, quote, handing out massive amounts of Viagra to soldiers and encouraging them to systematically rape? Many in the corporate press spread the story in an apparent report from the International Criminal Court, which I cannot find. Hillary used this as her reason to run airstrikes. No corroborating evidence that I can seem to find to support these claims. Any thoughts on that?
Well, there's so many cases where we go in and we plant reports, and then we publicize them and get the media to repeat them and repeat them and repeat them. It's like what happened a couple of years ago in Douma. Douma was the site of in Syria, was the site of a supposed chemical weapons attack. And of course, it was blamed on the President Assad. But when they went and started inspecting, when independent inspectors went in there, they found that the scene had been staged, that there never was even a chemical attack. The chemicals were laid later. There are videos of people going in and creating essentially a staging, the way you would do with selling real estate, where you say, okay, we're going to put the blown up things here, and we're going to put the shells that contain the chemical weapons here, and they just essentially they create these scenarios, they create these lies so that they can justify this. It's just like what they did in Iraq, where they said there were weapons of mass destruction, or even going back further in Iraq, the first Gulf War. One of the reasons that we went in was because of the incubator babies. If you're old enough, you might have heard about the Iraqis went into Kuwait and started ripping babies out of incubators so that they could take the incubators back to Iraq. Mm-hmm. Well, the source of that was a testimony from a 14-year-old girl in front of Congress. It turned out that she was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador. She hadn't been in Kuwait in years, and there was no evidence other than that false report of this ever happening. These things happen in war all the time, whether you're talking about the fake Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam, whether you're talking about the Belgian in World War I, the babies who were bayoneted by the Germans. That never happened. These things are become myths.
Right, and it always plays the same thing. And it's almost like the folks who play these stories are very, very good at advertising techniques and how to create popular persuasion quickly, because they always take these stories of victims. It's always a little granular story. It's this baby in an incubator. And they plant that image in your head and you say, oh my goodness, the barbarians. Or they say, look, Assad heard that Trump was about to leave, so he decided to gas children so that the world's biggest superpower would not leave. It's like, what? But you see that image, and then Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough go on there and they say, one day they say Black Lives Matter and then the next day they say, hey, we need to bomb brown people in Syria and people of color in Syria. And they don't even miss a beat because they always hide behind a victim, don't they? They always hide behind victims, or whether they're real or not, they always find a victim story to make their narrative, right?
Yes, exactly. You talk about human shields all the time. Well, they are using the human shields.
Right. And that's why I'm very skeptical of anything these media folks say, even domestic stuff, because if they really cared about, really defending real victims, then they would be denouncing these wars. You look at folks, again, like the politically correct media that continues to highlight, police brutality, but that's good if it's true police brutality. That's good to highlight it. But if your direction is to then turn it into legitimizing the destruction of private property and things like that, they're doing the same switcheroo that they do with these stories overseas. Oh, look, it's a victim. Okay, I don't like that. And then, okay, so what's your buy? What do you want me to buy? You want me to buy war? You want me to buy more killing? Okay, no, thank you. They do that every time, these media liars.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons that we operate the way we do at antiwar.com. We try to present the news as it is actually going on. We do our very best to make sure that it's the truth, even if it's against our political narrative. We want people to know the information and to make their decisions based on the truth. And antiwar.com is constantly updating our information. If we make a mistake, we admit it. We will retract stories where we find out that we're incorrect. And often we will debunk stories that actually are being promoted by other anti-war groups, because we don't want to have our position based on lies. We believe that the truth is the best way to get people to act appropriately.
Right. Well, I totally commend that, and I think we need to keep highlighting the truth about our foreign policy. So we'll take a quick break. But with Neighbor's Choice, call in at 727-587-1040.